Hello and welcome to Unlock Business Value with Windows on AWS. Today's session is part of Together We Innovate, an online event to help you understand how AWS partners are supporting our customers' cloud computing journey. My name is Summer Young, Windows Partner Specialist at our Amazon Web Services, and I will be your host and moderator for today's webinar. In today's session, you will learn from AspireLex, our AWS Advanced Consulting Partner, who will share with you how they supported one of Malaysia's major network services and facility providers' digital transformation journey. Not only AspireLex helps the customer migrate its workloads to AWS with minimal interruption to its end user, they also supported the customer to accelerate the business growth by modernize their IT infrastructure and applications, empower customers to scale rapidly and cost effectively. Before we start, let me share some housekeeping rules. When you join today's webinar, either by phone call or your computer audio, if for any reason you would like to change your selection, you can do so by accessing your audio pane in your control panel. Meanwhile, from this control panel, you will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the questions pane. We will collect these questions and address them during the Q&A session. In the end, if we are not able to get to your question, we plan on responding to each of you personally through email. At the end of today's session, you will also receive a set of survey questions. Please take time to provide your feedback so that we can continue to improve and understand what you require to become successful in your business. This is also a platform to highlight if you require any further assistance from AWS and AspireLex. Finally, this session is being recorded, and we will share a copy of the recording by the end of next week. Today, we'll be hearing from Ms. Barika and Mr. Arus. Barika is a Vice President for Strategic Alliance and Partnership at AspireLex. With over 20 years of professional experience in general management, strategic alliance management, marketing and sales across markets in EMEA and APAC, her strong knowledge and expertise are highly appreciated in IT, telecom, infrastructure, and the services industry. Alinus is experienced technical cloud consultant in AspireLex. He is very skilled in cloud infrastructure design, application migration and modernization, customer relationship management (CRM) implementations. Before I hand over to the two speakers, let me take the opportunity for a quick introduction of Amazon Web Services, or AWS. For almost 15 years, AWS has been the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud platform. AWS has been continually expanding its services to support virtually any cloud workload, and it now has more than 200 fully featured services for compute, storage, database, AI and machine learning, and of course, enterprise workloads such as Microsoft Windows and SQL. Millions of customers, including the fast-growing startups, largest enterprise, and leading government agencies, trust AWS to power their infrastructure, become more agile and lower cost. To learn more about AWS, you can visit our website, aws.amazon.com. Partners are a key part of AWS families. There are tens of thousands of AWS partners across the globe. More than 90% of the Fortune 100 companies and the majority of Fortune 500 companies use AWS partner solutions and services. AWS partners are uniquely positioned to help business take full advantages of all AWS has to offer and accelerate the journey to the cloud. The relationship with AspireLex is quite special. AspireLex is the first partner obtain AWS Microsoft competency in ASEAN. They demonstrated strong capability of proving solution for customers to migrate and modernize Microsoft workload on AWS, and help customers reduce cost, gain agility, and drive innovations on AWS cloud. AspireLex is also the winner for AWS ASEAN Analytics and Machine Learning Partner of the Year in 2020, recognizing them playing significant role in helping customers build resilience in their business and unlock business value on AWS Cloud. And this is why we are very excited to have Aspire Next today to talk about what they do, as well as share how they have helped customers and can help customers like you. So I would like to invite Barika to come and share your story with us.
Thank you, Summer. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And hello, everybody. And thank you once again for joining the session today. And I can definitely say you're going to learn a lot, and it's going to be very exciting. Just so quickly, Anirudh, can you go to the next slide? Right. So like Summer said, I am a part of the Aspire Next team, and she's already introduced me in detail, and thank you very much for that, Summer. I will be taking about 5 to 7 minutes to walk you through a little bit about who is Aspire Next and how we've actually helped clients across different parts of the world. So with that, I would like to just spend a few minutes in talking about Aspire Next. Yes, we are a very passionate and excited partner of AWS. And while Aspire Next, our journey started about 10 years back, and we are now a large organization with about 300 odd people. We are spread in different countries, and as we speak, we now have our offices, our sales and pre-sales delivery teams in 5 major locations. We are headquartered in Singapore, which is also where I am based out of. We also have operations in Malaysia, Philippines, India, and in England, being the latest entry in our list of countries we are present. We will soon, in the next 3 to 4 months, also start our operations in Australia. So that's a little bit about from a coverage standpoint of Aspire Next. And needless to say, we work hand in glove with AWS. And like Summer mentioned, we are a proud partner in that sense for having recognized by AWS for various good things we've done. One, of course, we were the partner of the year last year for analytics and ML. Having said that, we're also the first competent partner to actually help customers across different markets to help them get more work on the Windows workload. And I know there is a lot of information in store for you from that standpoint, which Anirudh, my colleague, is going to cover. Apart from that, I'd like to also draw your attention that the reason that we've had several customer case studies and use cases and wins in Southeast Asia and now in other parts is because I think our approach has been something that has been liked by our customers, which is we like to handhold our customers. We like to tell them how things can change the way they do work and what is the business outcomes we can drive. And in that process, what we do is literally handhold and do some sort of a POC in some sense to help our customers. And that's something you must stay till the end of the discussion and presentation, because we do have some exciting offers on how we can work with each one of you in that sense. Before I again invite Anirudh to speak, I also want to draw your attention on the sheer number of services and which are the areas we are very strong in. One is, of course, analytics. And the other pieces that we do is also a lot of modernization of applications. We help customers do a lot of managed services, professional services. We have a separate team of experts who help our clients to work around the security space on cybersecurity, right? So while we are going to be talking a lot about Windows in this conversation, I would love to actually get an opportunity for our team to engage with you in just talking about how we can help you get onto your digital transformation and how can we actually make you more successful in your individual work areas. So with that as a brief introduction, thank you once again. And of course, we'll talk later about the exciting offers in store for each one of you. With that, if I may also request Anirudh, who is our technical expert and has also helped a lot of customers in Southeast Asia to truly leverage the power of cloud. And I'm sure we are all very excited to see how we can actually take this proposition to your organization. So thank you very much. And over to you, Anirudh.
Thank you, Bhavika. Thank you for the introduction, Sama and Bhavika, to our webinar today. And good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is having a great day today. And so I'm going to take you through a short presentation of a solution where we helped customers go ahead and migrate, basically do a data center exit of their Windows workloads from their on-premise data center into AWS in the most seamless way possible, right? So the customer that we were talking to was a telecommunications infrastructure provider in the Southeast Asia region, one of the largest in the region. And their network is the backbone on which other telecommunication providers work. So being the backbone to other telecommunication providers, they have to ensure that they have a robust network, a robust infrastructure, and a high uptime on their infrastructure to go ahead and support their end customers, right? Now, the customer had a lot of challenges in the beginning, and these can be segregated into a business challenge and a technical challenge, right? So, a focus into their business challenge. The customer already had thoughts about going ahead with a digital transformation journey. Right now, this is a key term that's been going around the market as of late about having a digital transformation journey and digitalizing your infrastructure, moving your infrastructure into a more modernized methodology, right? And at the start of the year of 2020, the customer was had no idea how they would go ahead and begin that journey, right? And then that's when COVID struck, and COVID was the kick they needed to actually go ahead and start their digital transformation journey, because all of a sudden their centralized workforce was now a distributed workforce. Everyone was working from home. They had to adapt to the new normal, and some of the challenges they faced during this and some of the challenges that they continue to face before this was their limited infrastructure, right? So being a on-premise data center, there's only so much they could have grown, and they had, considering the market was growing, telecommunication services were growing during the pandemic, the need to adopt technology was done, right? So the speed to market, to the ability to onboard users was done, and this also drove a high capex and expenditure for them to go ahead and start scaling their infrastructure, right? The math didn't really add up for them, so keeping that in mind, they had a lot of challenges from a business standpoint of view, where the management was a little stuck on how do they progress. The technical teams, on the other hand, had a similar type of challenge, right? Now, considering the high capex environment and the virtualized environment they were running in, and with almost 80% of the capacity utilized by their current workload, adopting new infrastructure was nearly impossible. With end of life hardware and software like Windows 2008 operating systems on which they actually ran their file servers, going ahead and upgrading all of this infrastructure was a huge capex environment, capex cost to them, and also pose a huge security risk if they continue to run in that type of environment, right? Now, this security risk and the high capex meant that they couldn't currently scale. That means with unscalable workloads, they couldn't address business needs. Now, by not addressing business needs, this directly influences your loss in revenue, along with having a 80% capacity utilized on your infrastructure means you're going to have a less available and less durable infrastructure, that having unforeseen downtime, which again would cause a loss in revenue and efficiency. So keeping these challenges in mind, Aspirex went ahead and designed a solution and a migration strategy for the customers, right? So the solution leveraged AWS's services extensively, all the way from the VPN to the tools used to migrate their infrastructure from their data center into AWS. So we leveraged, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, a plethora of AWS services. This is just a few that are named out of the services that we actually used, right? So what we did is we went and assessed the infrastructure. We analyzed what the environment was, what is the best way for them to move their infrastructure and their data into AWS and into the cloud. And then we leveraged AWS's migration services. AWS has a lot of migration services for different use cases, and we were able to successfully use these services to migrate their infrastructure into AWS. And I will talk a little bit about these services in the coming slides. Right now, some of the services that we actually leveraged was through AWS's migration hub, right? So the customer ran a VMware environment on premise with a lot of Windows operating systems and MS SQL databases and an Oracle database also. So we leverage AWS's Cloud Endure migration, which is a managed migration tool that AWS owns and lets you use for free to actually migrate your infrastructure from a or maybe a third-party cloud or from your on-premise data center into AWS. Now, for the databases, we use AWS's database migration service, which is a heterogeneous migration tool. You can go ahead and move from one type of database engine like from MySQL into MS SQL or from Oracle into maybe RDS Aurora or maybe even, and you can also do a homogeneous type of migration from Oracle to Oracle or from MySQL to MySQL or in our case MS SQL to MS SQL. Right, and for the file server, we had no choice but to go ahead and modernize infrastructure during this migration because we didn't want to bring in those security risks that the customer had while they were on premise. So we leveraged AWS data sync to go ahead and modernize the file server infrastructure into while we move them into the cloud. Right now, the whole idea behind our migration strategy was to have a seamless migration. The customer's workload was very complex from both from the backend system all the way to the ERPs. So we had to do a complete data center exit and phase out the migration in such a way that end users are not hit by the migration. Right, so for the end users, it had to be a seamless migration, whether they were an AD user with an object in the AD and they were just authenticating through the AD, or they were someone using the files within the file server, right? So by leveraging AWS's migration tools, we were able to replicate their instances or their virtual machines into AWS. We were able to test out these applications on AWS by using the sandbox testing that's provided by Cloud Endure. And sandbox testing is something that's very important while you're doing a migration. We were able to test the application for its integrity of data, for its working, and test it out in a new environment before we had to cut over. By making the cutover very minimal, we were able to seamlessly even migrate the database, right? And I'll talk about each of these services in a little more detail and how it brings value by leveraging these services together in a strategy that will actually give you a successful migration to the cloud. Right? The whole infrastructure can be broken down into three parts. So a traditional data center structure, right? So you have your data layer where you have all your object storage, you have all your files that you store all of them there. Then you have your database layer where you have records that your application leverages to go ahead and talk to the database, pull out information that is requested by an end user. And then again, then you have the third and final layer, that's the application layer that is running on virtual machines. It could be a web application, it could be an application like an Active Directory, but they all at the end of the day run on a virtual machine. So talking about how we went ahead and addressed the data layer. And the data layer is where we saw the most complexity, considering the infrastructure was very old. It was running Microsoft 2008. The Windows 2008 operating system is now end of life and poses security risks, giving hackers a loophole to enter your environment. Right now, to alleviate that risk, we went and leveraged AWS's data sync, which is a seamless data replication service that helps you replicate data from existing NFS or SMB file share like a Windows file server in our case into AWS services like S3 or FSX or EFS in a very seamless way. it doesn't require even a reboot on your on-premise system. You just go ahead and you install the agent or either on the cloud or on the system, and you connect your system to the agent, and the agent goes ahead and scans your data, scans for deduplication, scans for how much you can compress the data during the transfer, and also the permissions and any metadata attached to your data, right? So this metadata and permissions and data is then compressed, secured with TLS 1.2, and then replicated over to the required AWS service. Now, in our case, we were leveraging AWS FSx, which is a Windows file server on AWS and managed by AWS. So we replicated all of this into AWS FSx seamlessly and continue to replicate it because the customer has only started the migration strategy, right? So our strategy was to continue replicating till we did a final cutover. So by replicating all the data, we now had a copy of the data on the cloud, and any changes made to your on-premise data were replicated to your data on AWS, right? So you have an option to actually remove deletes. So if someone deleted a file on-premise, you would still have your file on the cloud. So making it an excellent backup and DR kind of tool too. So in our case, we were using it for migration. So we left it on replicate all changes. And with the amount of data, so the customer had around 20 TB of data on-premise, we were able to migrate all of that data by compressing it and also by removing for duplicates of the files, right? So we didn't want duplicates of the files on the cloud, so the customer was able to even modernize their data as well as modernize their infrastructure that held the data also during the migration. Now, now comes to the, I'm just going to skip over the database layer and go to the application layer and talk about the database layer next. So the application layer is where you have your virtual machines. So these virtual machines running maybe IIS or maybe running Apache, running your Active Directory systems, running various applications. Maybe it could be your ERP also, right? Now we had to go ahead and migrate even the applications into the cloud. Now the reason we did the applications before the databases was because when you migrate the database into the cloud, you need to do a few application level changes, and it's easier to do these changes once they're already in the cloud, right? So what we did was we went ahead and we installed the Cloud Endure agent, which is a small agent that runs on your Windows systems and goes ahead and does a block by block replication into a staging area in AWS. Now, the relevance of the staging area is important because it gives you a pre-production environment to test your environment through sandbox testing, which tells you the integrity of your application. It gives you the integrity of your data that your application is using. And we went ahead and did this, right? So we went ahead, we replicated all of this into AWS. We went ahead and tested it using Sandbox, and then we deployed the production environment, right? Now, during this is when we also went ahead and migrated the database. So, right. So the database replication was done with AWS Database Migration Service. So AWS Database Migration Service is a synchronous migration or replication service from AWS for both heterogeneous data environments, database environments, or even homogeneous database environments. Right? You could have a single database or multiple database. In our case study today, the customer had multiple databases. He had an Oracle database, he had an MS SQL database, and he had a MySQL database. The Oracle database belonged to an ERP along with the MySQL database, whereas the MS SQL database was used for various of his processes in his backend infrastructure, right? So we were able to replicate all three databases into the cloud, and we enabled something called continuous replication on AWS Database Migration Service. Now, continuous replication allows you to go ahead and replicate any change data on your database on premise. Now, change data captures are very important because you want to avoid having stale data on the cloud during a migration, right? Stale data is what causes data discrepancies in your ERP, in your CRM, in maybe even your business intelligence tools. Stale data is what causes variations in what is true to what you're seeing. So that was something that was very important to the customer, that he does not have stale data, and AWS's database migration service actually helped us go ahead and implement this with a millisecond latency. That means we had almost no difference in the data, considering the workload that we were working with. And we were able to seamlessly cut over the database into the applications on the cloud by just replacing the database endpoint of the applications, right? So this makes it a very seamless what do you call it, migration for a database, migration for your application, and migration for your data layer. And users had did not even realize that there was a change in infrastructure. They continue to work as like business as normal, while the company organization was able to go ahead and migrate the infrastructure into a completely modernized infrastructure.
Aspire Next. We work with one of the leading telecommunication providers in Southeast Asia to transform their current infrastructure from a traditional to a more modernized infrastructure. Our customer was a traditional enterprise running their application in their own data center. With growing business requirements, scaling their infrastructure proved to be an expensive and inflexible option. Their realization has catalyzed enterprises into action. The need for business agility is recognized as essential to remain relevant in this changed business environment. Modern application architecture is a response to the business need for agility. The customer looked into the cloud as an alternative to digitize and modernize their infrastructure, to be future-ready by adopting a migration framework and modernizing their applications. The goal of our customer was to migrate their infrastructure, digitize their capacity management system, integrate their capacity management system into their core ERP, and create a framework that would allow them to modernize their ERP for the future. This, in turn, would improve their visualization of their infrastructure and would help the customer demonstrate key metrics that would help them map their infrastructure in future phases. Our solution leverages AWS's cloud adoption framework along with its migration tools and capabilities that helped our customers migrate their workloads into AWS, giving their end users a seamless experience during the migration. The customer proceeded to migrate their infrastructure to AWS, leveraging tools like Cloud Endure that help them test their infrastructure in a sandbox environment, hence providing an exercise to right-size their environment, allowing for a seamless and cost-optimized deployment of their infrastructure. The capacity management system delivers a direct business value while the data center exit and migration were necessary for the long-term goals of modernization and improving the business experience. Our customer has achieved a significant stepping stone in their digital transformation journey by migrating to the cloud and adopting a dynamic web application based on serverless technology that integrates with their ERP systems, ensuring data consistency across the board.
So that was a small whiteboard on what our customer experienced during the migration, right? And its benefits of the migration and basically how they were benefited throughout the entire process and when during the decisions that they went through to migrate their infrastructure into AWS. Now to just to point out some of the solutions and how they were beneficial to the customer. Now everyone, all migrations revolve around either the digital transformation process or even the ability to save costs while moving to the cloud, right? And cost optimization is a key factor when you move into AWS. When we moved our organization or the customer into AWS, we were able to see a 20% decrease in the cost of running their infrastructure in their TCO, right? By moving them from a capex to opex model. Now that was a very key aspect in their complete operations, because instead of considering the high capex they had spend they had to do to go ahead and maybe modernize the infrastructure on premise and adopt new technologies on premise, they were able to do it at 20% lower cost on AWS. Now this 20% lower cost they can go ahead and put into newer projects help them go ahead and adopt more technology faster, right? Now, the reason they saw this 20% lower cost was because of AWS's economies of scale. Economies of scale shows that because they were able to migrate their entire infrastructure to AWS, they saw a higher price reduction than maybe just moving a single application into AWS, right? So the entire DC exit was an opportunity for them to go ahead and reduce their costs considerably by 20%. Another pricing point or a pricing strategy that they adopted was the pay-as-you-go model, where they continue to only pay for what they use and when they use it, right? So if I take into consideration AWS's EC2, whenever they are running, so they are running in an auto-scaling model, right? So their infrastructure scales as per need, and the scales down when it's not needed. And they only pay for those hours when it has scaled up, and they do not pay for it when the hours they have scaled down, right? With a continuous optimization strategy, where Aspirenext continuously studies their infrastructure, studies the performance metrics and the various other metrics configured, we are able to go ahead and resize, scale the applications either up or down efficiently, giving them a better cost optimized infrastructure, along with the license benefits that AWS brings to the table with their pay-as-you-go licenses, right? And the company was also able to remove all overhead charges, charges like electricity, cooling, the cost to actually procure infrastructure, right? A lot of organizations don't realize it, but there's also costs associated in procuring the infrastructure. That wait time can be quantified into a cost, right? That few months that you wait for a server or a piece of storage to come to your data center can be quantified into a value, and that value was negated by migrating them into AWS, right? Another benefit that directly relates to their challenges that they faced in the beginning, right, is the scalability. They did not have a scalable infrastructure, that hence stunning their growth, right? Now, with AWS, they're able to scale almost infinitely depending on business needs. They can continue to scale up, continue to scale down, adopt new infrastructure, scale that infrastructure, and this flexibility gives them the opportunity to actually adopt more business, bring in more business, right, without the need to go ahead and check, do they have the infrastructure that can support the business. They can go ahead and do a carefree adoption of new clients. It could be hiring 10 more people, hiring 1,000 more people. They can go ahead and do it easily because they know that their infrastructure is on AWS. Another aspect of the solution and another benefit of the solution was the reliability that AWS brings. Now, by running your own infrastructure on premise, you have to take into consideration building reliable infrastructure on premise also. Now, building reliable infrastructure on premise means stuff like configuring RAID on your storage, ensuring high availability for your VMs, ensuring that you have a DR infrastructure set up, ensuring that you have your archiving set up, your backup set up, adopting those backup tools, etc., into your infrastructure, right? So AWS gives you all of this, these benefits, where you go ahead and you leverage AWS's backup, you leverage the uptime of AWS through its SLAs, around 99%, by designing your infrastructure to be fault tolerant and highly available on AWS itself, right? And you can achieve fault tolerance with concepts like auto scaling, where you decide that you're going to have a minimum of 2 servers at all given points of time. So even if something does happen to your existing VMs, auto scaling ensures that your infrastructure is so fault tolerant that it automatically creates VMs to support your need, right? So this gives you the ability to be flexible with your reliability also. So you have a quantifiable reliability that you can take to the market, right? So say you're a SaaS hold application, or you're running a SaaS application. Now SaaS applications have to be reliable. They have to be fault tolerant, because you have other end users who are dependent on your SaaS application, and AWS gives you this reliability and this the scalability needed for you to run your applications. And our customer was able to feel that reliability and scalability, because anytime there was a downtime on-premise, there used to be a loss of revenue. But now with his reliability on the cloud, with his infrastructure on the cloud, the reliability was exponentially grown up, right? So with that exponential growth reliability, he is confident about his infrastructure running on AWS. Now, just a direct correlation, right? The business outcomes from the business challenges and the technical outcomes from the technical challenges, right? Now, post migration, the customer was blown away by AWS or AWS's capabilities, Spinex's capabilities to actually migrate their infrastructure from their on-premise data center into AWS, and this was a direct correlation to the challenges that they were facing, right? Now, if you look at the challenges on adopting new technology and adopting the new norm, that is everyone working from home, the distributed workforce, the workforce that needs access, secure access, or scalable applications, because maybe they continue to adopt new technology, they continue to grow the business, right? Now, that was able to be directly addressed during this migration by leveraging AWS's scalable infrastructure. The high capex expenditure, the high capital expenditure that they had during their talks of maybe migrating their existing data center was alleviated by moving to an OPEX model, and this was directly shown with a 20% decrease in the total cost of ownership, right? And they were able to, like I said, scale their workloads as business grows. And this actually was a kickstart to their digital transformation journey, right? This wasn't the end of the journey. They were able to go ahead. This was basically the DC exit was basically the kickstart that they needed to go ahead with their digital transformation journey. And I'll talk about another project that we are in works with the customer to go during the digital transformation journey. Some of the technical outcomes, this is something that was very important for the customer, considering most of their challenges was very what do you say, technically based challenges. One of them was on their file server, right? Leveraging the file server to be secure, making sure we're leveraging the AWS file server, making sure that it's secure, making sure that the whatever risks they had on premise, maybe the old operating system, was alleviated when they moved onto the cloud, right? That was made sure by leveraging AWS managed services, that is FSx for Windows file server. They were able to scale their workloads from a technical standpoint of view. They had access to the infrastructure required to scale their workloads, whether it be an AMD-based infrastructure or an Intel-based infrastructure. They were able to go ahead and leverage that infrastructure easily on AWS. They were able to move their licensing model into AWS, right? So they were able to adopt AWS's pay-as-you-go licensing model, where they use AWS's relationship with Microsoft to go ahead and use the licenses and make it less of a burden on them managing the licenses and going ahead and renewing licenses when needed. And the entire infrastructure also, by migrating to AWS, reduced the attack surface, right? Because they were able to adopt intrinsic tools that AWS provides for security, right? So this gave the technical team a huge boost from a security standpoint of view also. Why choose AWS? The customer was very keen to move to the cloud, right? Now, being a complete on-premise customer, cloud was something new for them, and with continuous talks and conversations with AWS and Spinex, the customer was able to realize the various benefits that AWS brings to the table, right? The streamlined process for migrations, the various frameworks available when you're on the cloud, and other factors like cost optimization, your reliability, security, and scalability. Sorry about that. Now, with industry leading infrastructure, right, being a hyperscaler, AWS brings a plethora of services to the user, that the user can to the customer, that he can use to pave his way into a digital transformation journey. So this actually was a kickstart into our next conversation with the customer, right, where we are actually modernizing their current ERP and CMS. So they were able to what do you say? Modernized their capacity management system, which ran on a very legacy system. This legacy system actually was end of life, and the whole process was kind of outdated. So we were actually able to bring business value through this modernization, right? Now we are actually creating a completely customized application using an agile framework that's also backed by our DevOps competency, right, into their existing process, and they were able to easily go ahead and adopt this new application into their process. And concurrently, we're also modernizing their .NET ERP solution that also duplicates as their CRM. So their ERP and CRM very niche products, considering the niche market they're in. We are currently modernizing that system and going ahead and integrating it with the capacity management system that we have developed, reducing the need for them to go ahead and renew licenses. Which is again a recurring capital expenditure for them, right? So we go ahead and we went ahead and started this conversation also with the customer by leveraging those AWS services, right? Now, that's it from my end. I would like now to call Bhavika back to the stage to go ahead and talk you through the exciting offer that we have for you. Over to you, Bhavika. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Anirudh. I think that was a very, very insightful session, and I'm hoping, like I enjoyed it, everybody else equally enjoyed it. I know we need to keep some time for Q&A, but I do want to urge each and every one of you that we have a special promotion offer that we're running at this point. And this is, of course, for a limited time and number of customers that we can actually support. What we want to do is see how we can take your business use case, get you some sort of a POC trial conversation going. And for that, there is a QR code right up your screen. We'll stay on this slide for a minute or two so that you guys can scan the code. And it's a very simple form where you can just put your name and details, which will allow us to come back to you. And then we can also schedule a more customized conversation, and we can invite Anirudh to spend time with you on an individual company basis to kind of see how best and how soon can we start your journey onto the AWS platform. So apart from this, I'm going to be inviting our host and moderator, Samar, to just look for any questions, and if we need to answer them right away.
Sure, thank you, Bhavika. Now we're going to transition to the Q&A section. As a reminder, you will be able to submit any written questions through the question panel. Okay, let's start with the first one. How does Microsoft licensing work on AWS? We have already invested the license. Can I bring my own license to AWS? Anil, you want to take all this question?
Yes, Sama, thank you for the question. It's a very interesting and very good question, right? A lot of customers have this perception that once they move into the cloud, they don't have the ability to bring their licenses into the cloud, and that's not true, right? So AWS itself gives you two options when you're bringing a license into the cloud, right? Now you can go ahead and bring your own license where you leverage your license purchases that you've made previously, maybe leverage your enterprise agreement with your principals to move these licenses into the cloud, right? Keeping in mind, obviously, the Microsoft end user licensing agreement and terms and conditions. Or you can go ahead and leverage AWS's licenses, or leverage AWS's relationship with Microsoft, and leverage the pay-as-you-go licensing scheme for both your maybe your operating system licenses for Windows, for your Windows workloads, or even your SQL database licenses on AWS.
Thank you. The second question is very detailed. Thanks for sharing from the audience. They mentioned that we have multiple offices globally, and our on-premise Active Directory is running on mix of Windows 2012 and 2008. It is a quite complex setup. We plan to move to the cloud. What are the options for my Active Directory on AWS?
That is a very detailed question. Thank you to whoever sent it in. So, considering that you have older operating systems, right? AWS actually gives you the opportunity to go ahead and modernize your application when you bring it into AWS. Now, considering you're running your Active Directory on these operating systems, you have the ability to either move your Active Directory into AWS's EC2, which is your VM, your virtual machine on the cloud, or you can go ahead and leverage AWS's managed service, right? So that is your managed Windows Active Directory on the cloud, where AWS manages the infrastructure to run your Active Directory, and you go ahead and just manage your running or your administration of your Active Directory and your objects in your Active Directory.
Okay, good. Due to the time constraint, let's take the last question. You can continue to submit the questions in the question panel. We will get back to you in the one-to-one manner through the email. Okay, so the last question is from the audience. Before I migrate to AWS, I want to know what do I have in my environment. And I also want to understand how you can help me to reduce the TCO if I migrate to AWS.
Right. That's again a very good question. Thank you. So this can be achieved easily. You're doing an optimization and licensing analysis, right? So the optimization and licensing analysis is something that is done during the discovery and assessment phase of a migration, where Aspirenext and AWS basically we go ahead and we go into your infrastructure. We look at what your infrastructure is. We look at your licensing terms. We use tools. We use industry leading tools that AWS also owns, or basically AWS is partnered with, and we leverage these tools to go ahead and create a report of what your environment has, and gives you also TCO on what it's going to look like if you go ahead and migrate your infrastructure into AWS, right? This helping you build a business case that you can go ahead and use to kickstart your digital transformation journey. And this is something that if I look back into our offer slide, is something we are actually giving out as an offer. So if you would like, we could actually reach out to you and go ahead and kickstart this through our Ola offer.
Great. Okay, thank you. We have come to the end of today's session. A big thank you to Bhavika and Anius for being so generous with your time. Likewise, we want to thank the audience for spending time with us. A gentle reminder to fill up our post-session survey so that we can continue to deliver information that are relevant and useful for your cloud computing journey. Finally, if you are interested in attending other sessions in this online event, please refer to the link we have shared in the chat box. We look forward to seeing you at the future AWS events. Thank you.